그런 저 소소나 요거들이 담배는 게 주로 남발라 토마토시 델릭쇼이
First, I would like to say that Shidele to all my Dharma friends in the various countries around the world.
나한테 양다다다스로 무소 자발지지 냠네 지차세 요리들이 따로다 그래 내가 빠체 왕게들이 냠도 좀 맡았다들 자작하니들이 소제들이 대차우리들이 사망해서 자작하들이 다 은혜에서 말했었는 대 말이 들이 저듯이 이제라는 거는 송구리 감선 말이죠 예체보다 들을 는 조직은 좀 강과 정동난 소나 양 뭐가 되는 저단 되는 게 다 단단하니 운이 곰고거리 이 대말이 따로 운이 진짜 안 잡히는데 다왜 차트봐 드니 세력들아 시합을 시합들을 사만 잡아야 십자시 사지 사와지 성직이 성고 성물이 내일 취직이 가해는들이 시합을 뛰네 선지 삼체에 대화 동의 좀 이제 록이렇게 록이 직발에 드리테 하작가 와상도 동다야고 드리 같이 무릎을 절로요.
So we are engaging in this practice of Manjushri Yamantaka every year on an ongoing basis, but this year it is due to some temporary obstacles that we were not able to practice together in a group, so here physically this year. So we have to practice over the live stream together. But so then that may lead some people to think that, so what you see on the screen on the live stream, that's not the real thing. But that's actually not true, because we always say it, and it also says in the Yamantaka practice, it says you should regard the 3 realms of samsaric existence as the boundless palace of the deity. So even though normally we are practicing together in a small kind of confined room like this, actually during this time we are supposed to visualize in a really vast way, visualizing the entire universe. So before it was more like a visualization, and now it has sort of become a reality. We visualize, we are the entire world, we are all over the world. And so actually, also the fact that we meet over the live stream is due to science, and science also is an aspect of wisdom, and all forms of wisdom are by nature Manjushri. And Jigten Sumgön also had said that everything that is done in the field of knowable things, meaning this world, so everything that's done in this world is done by the Buddha. So whatever we do, whether it's a Dharma activity, a Dharma practice, or a mundane activity, it is through wisdom that we bring about happiness and that we abandon suffering. So in that sense, the 2 systems, the worldly and the spiritual systems, really are the same. So actually, in these circumstances now, we are actually very fortunate, and it's very meaningful. And it's actually a time where we have transformed, where we are transforming obstacles into cities.
토가 축제대로 준비하래. 얘는 들리는 거 참고 담 고기 공탑지 섬 남한마 통화제 대고 요리. 이 다다로 자작거리 잡다시가 이거 가래나 되네. 근데 그쪽 것들이 좀 제서함에 봐서 도담도 냐바니서 들이 당보방서들 르바보 탐제들이 선 넘버도 봐서도 매응 탑라들이 르바볼에서 뭐 탐제 볼까들이 아테도 고공성랑 르바보 나도 용어 제도 깎여 요면이 진짜말이 이제도 통문지 말이 나프랑지 그런 띠용으로 찹디 요리 들이 대회를 달았다는 답을 찹다지 들이서 참여량이 제 조과 대체가 요래.
So this is how it has become for the time being. And so in the past, when we had the Yamantaka Drupchen, then we had a lot of very strict rules, like you couldn't just come for receiving the empowerment if you are not really joining the retreat, and there were many other rules that we have usually, such as we are closing the windows because we can't see the sky and we can't go outside, and many more rules. And so now, this year, it seems that we are kind of making an open announcement. It's kind of open to anyone on the live stream. So why is that? So on the relative level, it's because karma is unfailing. And on the ultimate level, it's because everything is the same. Everything is equal. And however, for a beginning practitioner who joined the Drupchen, normally the reason why we have all these strict rules is because for beginning practitioners, we are we have a tendency to be distracted very easily. A lot of thoughts arising in our mind. And so that's the reason for all these strict rules, like not seeing the sky or going outside and so on in silence, is so that the mind is not scattered all over the place. But that's the only reason. It's to protect us from our own thoughts, really. And it's not because there is generally something against a violation against Yamantaka and so on when you see the sky. Because actually his nature, Yamantaka's nature, really pervades the entire sky, the entire universe. So anyways, this is the reason why now this year we are kind of joining the retreat from all over the world, and it's also widely announced, and anybody is free and welcome to join the practice.
시지 가사깔이 요래 저록지다라 시지 냠니 체크 요래데 정까지데 카가리데 내는 참나들 탑데 하고 답고제고 그래 대 가래에 사드바 뭐또 들럭도서 정까지게 탑데 단저를 좀 보도다는 데 추적하는 성대 철 이제들이 선앙상섬 서드바 탑데 요지 three number percent of what the social attention the data the data salin and give us the manor at Namakare the Nagin do yore data Damian Lasso Watanji data the Junda Pipakari or the table Junda certain name Sanabia Tsikachiari Sanaptikachi Tata Sanaptikas and Habibi was a career. 다 로마 탐지 로카제들 drop 다보면 영영 drop 망고 drop 대회는 로마 탐지 새로 초아질 탑디 다 라디 제parti를 해제 내가 로마 찍게 제가 이렇게 잘랍서 거들 사직 다 니파 하람 동서서 로고요 로 사송스 옛날다 초아 그냥 제야마도 시제들 탱적 쇼들이 하작성으로 초아 제보라들이 당상 니시체 못지에도 이 가래라서 라게 제발 말에 들로가 제발에 처리들이 들어봐 가지들이 많이 버창가를 때들이 지록장들이 나사야만 것도 그래 대가서 갑자기 버리 대말이 시제데 거기는 송하양 톡등인지 됐으면 찍도 들들이 시제 땅들 딱 터먹 많이 봐 사탐지 됐다고 들어서 랍됐다고 그래 대회를 들지 살리데 다명지 계속 타고 때서 만들어왔더니 어떻게 좀 사지는 게 이제는 줄 알았다 봐도지 마냥 봐줄래 일단 통통이 노트북을 말이 대회를 대회 만화와지 유타다 유배 이렇게 돼서 제가리 대회를 들려서 막 답지를 누구만 보여래 들려서 막 답지를 들이 좋아 가까이 오래 대회는 대이 마음과는 미치나 네 따라들이 선랑상섬 세요지 만좀 나야 들이 랑트게 무슨 점마다 이제들 봐대 다들 이제들 봐 무슨 차들다 원고요래 그 감사 말이자 예전부터 대다고 원고지 난다 상황이 들이 당양 집을 용지 쳐보 요래 이거는 라선랑 이거 소라 지남들 똑바세다 답저가 라선랑 샤르고래 대나기 제산이 탐지 한정 아제 이것들 들서랍지 못해 왜이렇게 사기리 집같이 좀 마시고 봐도 이 가정만 좀 들이잖아 들이사지다 집와서 라이스 한 말을 답답지지 들럭되게 들처지다 그랬더니 집에 도망가래 나오나 때는 이제 어떤 당시 때 따로요 이 체들이 다도 그래서 좀 틀리지 말을 때서 봐 야초데 그래서 라트 먹만 이번 배에서한테 들럭을 쳐봐래 락치바스타는 요 말이 그때 왜는 마음과는 냠이나나 뒤다 이제 다다 자작하는 것이 강 답답 것이야 다세 때서 난 대봐 요래 세 답답지 다치 철마냥 받대서 철기도 용토고 요 말이 다치 지금 녹설 잡아서 몇개 잡아서 저걸 될래서 합체 보이나 철기를 따지면 대외들이 실제 냠이 나와 탑라 이로 됐다지 네 저기 디갈이들랑 조장 요지 세 요지 가양 매내양 이제 저도 냠이 있지는 근데 다만 냠이 있지는 들랑 맞고 냠이 있지 저거 이체도 들고서 다들 저들이 들이바자 이 담양 제바 들이 참아들이 특특주는 따따따 들이 잡을 잡다 요요래 들이 잡다지들 마음과 썩은 냠이 있지는 라랑은 미 망난다 용난다 라는 쪽에나 들이 때문에 저렇게나 로마 코르도 잡도 여덟 개와 사마요래 대나기 다 듣긴 것을 합다 몇개가 되는 정도 요래 지체들이 다로 잡다셔요 대네들이 참에 됐다 털지 너는 마음과 지냐니 낭도 바탐지라 강이미 바랑 찍고 걔들이 빠르게 들이 다당냐면지 이렇게 생각된 정도 요래 지체들이 잡다시바이 이제 삼에 진바소
So regarding the third point is that regarding the very strict rules of the Yamantaka practice, that's actually also very specific to the Yamantaka according to the Jigung Kagyu lineage. And it's also, in this lineage in particular, it's also kept very secret, as a very secret practice, and it's generally not allowed to announce or propagate these teachings, share them with widely with a lot of people. And so actually, in other lineages, Yamantaka is also practiced, but it's a little bit different in the Jigung Kagyu lineage, because in the Jigung Kagyu lineage, with this particular practice, we are extremely strict. In other lineages, it's not actually that strict. And also there are not just the rules that we have to abide by, but also the sadhana and the practice itself, the ritual practice itself is quite extensive and complicated. And also there are many rules with regard to how to perform these various ritual activities. And so the reason for doing that is because it is said that what's more important than the practice itself is how we engage in practice, the way in which we engage in practice. And this particular practice, according to the Jigung Kagyu lineage, has been spread by, in the past through Chogi Dragpa and Rinchen Puntsok and so forth. Up until now, it has been transmitted in a completely authentic way in all aspects, outer, inner, and secret aspects. For example, the outer aspect of the practice is are the various ritual activities, such as the arrangement of the offerings and the ritual materials and so on. And then the inner aspect is to follow very many strict rules so that the mind can concentrate single-pointedly on the practice. So all of these different elements or kind of aspects of the practice have been sustained up until now unmistakably in an authentic way. Also, for example, the melody in which the chants are chanted, all of this has been preserved in the most authentic way. And this is really what gives this practice and the special feeling that people often experience. So that is why we say that there are so many blessings when we do this practice. Actually, many disciples have reported that special feeling. In the very beginning, when we started to do this practice here, there were just a few disciples doing it, and then there were more and more. And many disciples, especially one, for example, told me directly, had said that they had a very, very special experience during the Drupchen. And so that person said that, actually I had practiced a different deity for a very long time, and I accumulated something like 100 million mantras of that deity. So I had done extensive practice of that deity. But still, he said that I didn't really feel anything that special. But I did the Yamantaka Drupchen only one single time, and a real amazing, a special feeling arose in me. And I felt so much purity, a pure view, and trust in the deity, and so on. And so why is that? And so I told them that it's not a difference in the deity. The deity is not what makes the difference. It's not that the deity has greater blessings. But what makes the difference is how we engage in the practice. And so how we engage in this practice is unlike other deity practices. Often when we practice other deities, we focus a lot on how many mantras we are reciting. So we keep count of all the mantras, and then we say that I have accumulated so many millions of mantras of this deity. And so what you get from that, of course, are the blessings that come from mantra itself, but really only those blessings. In this Drupchen, the reason why we feel the blessings in such a powerful way is because we completely unify the body, speech, and mind, and we practice in a very intense and also authentic way. We follow all the guidelines and the ritualistic aspects, and we chant in the correct melody, and the mind is focused in a state of samadhi. And that is really why we experience these special feelings when we do this practice. And actually, if you practice any other deity in the same way, you would have the same feeling. The same blessings would arise. So, for example, it is said that just this mantra chant in that particular melody also comes from an unbroken lineage that has not declined, and that itself has a lot of blessings. And then since I'm young, for example, I have engaged in this practice continuously and always in the most authentic way, according to the tradition. And so then we still continue to do that. We sustain, we preserve this lineage. And that's why there are so many blessings, because it has been practiced for such a long time, and also because of the way in which it is practiced. So that's how the disciples should view the practice, and that's why you experience very special feelings. And also in the future, if you want to continue to engage in this practice, you may do so, and you just try to practice to assemble as many of these outer, inner, and secret aspects of the practice as you can, like the outer offerings and the various substances, like the dharmas and different actual materials that you arrange. And then those things that you cannot assemble, you can also visualize them, mentally create them. Because everything is actually pure by nature. It is said in the text that we should regard the entire universe at the three realms of existence as the boundless palace of the deity. So when you try to practice on your own, you try to bring together as many of these aspects of the practice as you can. And even just the chant in this diversified form, according to the melody, has a lot of blessings just on its own. And so when we practice following strict rules and seclude ourselves and observe a vow of silence and so on, the reason why we do that is so that no ordinary thoughts arise within our mind. When the mind is in this tranquil state, then the deity can appear very clearly. That's why we stay in a state of silence. And then the blessings will arise. And basically, until we have realized that, we have not really understood the real practice of the deity. And then often when we engage in the practice, in any practice really, in a very careless way, not really paying attention to the details, then also in any other practice, nothing is accomplished. So now we practice with great care and we follow the tradition. We do it the best we can according to how the knowledge holders, the Vidyadharas of the past, have done this practice. We try to emulate them in the best way we can. So this is how I encourage you to engage in this practice. And that's why I always say to people, if you really practice it, then you really have to practice it properly. If you do not practice it properly, then you also can just let it be. But it should be really engaged in with great care and really in an authentic way. And so, again, the difference is not the deity. The difference is how we engage in practice. And so when you engage in the practice yourself in the future on your own, then you should keep this in mind. And also now, we are not practicing as we usually do. We do it over the live stream. But we can follow their tradition in whichever way we can. And we cultivate faith and devotion, and we keep whichever rules we can, or vows we can keep. We try to assemble whatever substances of offerings we can. The mind remains undistracted. We chant in the melody and so on. So we do what we can, even if we cannot fulfill every single aspect of the tradition. We practice with great care, and that's the point. And that is where the great blessings really come from. And so this is how I encourage you to engage in this practice also in the future. So that is why also now we have made a video of the Drupchen practice available, so that in the future when you do the practice on your own, you can just follow this video and everything in the way it should be practiced is in that video. All the ritualistic aspects and the melody and the instruments and so on, and the offerings, everything the way it should be was assembled as well as we could in that video. So you can use that in the future also to do your own practice. And when you do the practice on your own at home, even if you cannot assemble all of the various offerings that are required, you can also mentally visualize them. So bring them to mind and then practice in the best way you can when you practice on your own. And also sometimes you can practice with a few other people together. For example, even if it's just 4 people who have taken the refuge vow, you can do this practice together. So that's the purpose. That's why we have created this video with great care and including all of the chants and the other aspects of the practice. And that's why we are also now putting it out there freely available, so that in the future, anyone who wants to engage in this practice properly is able to do so. So please keep that in mind. And so anyone who wants to do this practice in the future should be able to do so without too much difficulty, even if it's just yourself, because now we have this the video also available. And then if you practice accordingly, then the same blessings will enter your mind. So this is what I want you to know about now, the reason why the practice is being made widely available online now too.
Nanga just sabro choto tini pala gupa menshorta meba le o chaji tsukpa menshorta meba kusok tukti da je beta tang thala jor de wan khangba menchom ba cha so de yena nga just sabro chalna de sha tang de tema tha de tri rangdang unjong so de ni la ja chom chowa chonnan lo yore de sha tang de cha yore nanga zorlang khangli de 이 보고 총들 득템가 나와 쪽들이 막 시지들이 좀 쇼고거리 로타 차초거리 말이 내가 시지도 통화 시지도 받을 쇼스나 때문에 다 저발 양미세 야라 배 탕제 저버스 가고 요리데 시지도 한달이 쇼리 이 초합이 지고들이 라지 절대 받아 뭐 라르타나서 라지 샤르리 때로 차성 상다 가리에 되나 이 랑기 냠이 됐을 때 밤을 샬나 대도 로마 잡지 주라 랑지 책걸하고 랑지는 거솔라 철랑대 쟤네들이 화장도 때고 때 못들어서 보던지 로마 잡지 냠을 때도 서당사고 딱 썸좀 어디 대외 학과들이 소소로 이치치 체체서 그래서 다 시제다 잡을 잡을 동대래
And also myself, since I've engaged in this practice of the Yamantaka Drupchen for a long time, I really have an unwavering, really an immeasurable devotion to Yamantaka. And really his signs have appeared in different ways to me, in an outer, inner, and secret ways. In an outer way, an outer sign was, for example, there is this special tanka we have of Yamantaka. And that tanka actually came from the time of the fourth Garchen Rinpoche. It was his meditational support. It's a very precious tanka. And it always stayed at Gar Monastery. So we have the upper and the lower Gar Monastery. And it always stayed there. And so then after 1958, after the political turmoil broke out, the tanka had to be hidden. And during this time, from 58 until around 80, when I was released from prison again, during this entire time, the monastery basically completely disappeared. Not even sort of the name and the ruins remained. It was completely destroyed, and a lot of most of the holy objects of body, speech, and mind were destroyed and were burned and all turned into ashes. And also the houses where all the buildings were gone. So everything really was destroyed. But then, so when I came back from prison in 1980, immediately upon my return back to the area of the monastery, at the same time, actually, this Yamantaka mantra returned to the monastery as well, and it has remained completely undamaged during this entire time. And I really felt that this is the blessing of the deity. It's quite a miracle. So that was one outer sign, and one inner sign was that. So when I was very young, at a young age, I already had to do this practice. We have this annual Yamantaka retreat at the monastery, and we're not allowed to skip the practices, like 1 year or so. So I always joined the practice. Of course, as a child, I was feeling quite bored in the practice, and I just really wanted to play. But I was really, they forced me to join the practice. But then, even though I didn't really actually feel like doing it, during the Yamantaka Drupchen, somehow I had a very special feeling arising in my mind, and I felt extremely joyful. And just naturally, this feeling of faith and devotion and the pure view for the deity, it just all not naturally arose in me. So that's an inner sign. And a secret sign is that, so because I have engaged in this practice with great faith myself, and then when I came into the West, we started the retreat here, but actually we never really made any efforts in announcing it or having people join the practice. We just did it ourselves, and then the disciples just came from all over the place, and everybody wanted to join the practice, even though we never actually really announced it. It just happened naturally on its own. So these are some outer, inner, and secret signs of the deity. And just as they keep appearing, my trust, my faith in the deity really becomes stronger and stronger. And so, anyways, this is the reason, also one of the reasons why I wanted to make it now widely available, so it really spreads around the whole world.
양카시 시험 섭차이요래 대탐제다다 드링킹부터 인지는 뭐지 까르는 딜리들이 참아 사워들이 로망탑들이 쉬었다봐 차요래 저한테 차요래 드리 강을 되는 드링킹부터 인지는 드리 고소 보고 초들이 이적과 많이 봐 드리 랑거 보고 총들이 정도 랑도가들이 대서 가가 따를 시에다 시에다라서 와서 강인 잡네 이 본이 됐다면 이자 받고 열렸나 이 로를 법당 하나 로텔들이 나는 마페 보고 총들이 추주가 와서 뭐 거기들 법정들이 라종 것들이 네바 요래들이 그냥 탁발들이 데려지니들이 다 로마탑질에 거기서 저한테 롬을 세트거리 거기 같은 것들이 달라서만 신인들이 왔다들 나서 지파데 셔트발 대양들이 로마탑질 깔아서 뭐래
And so, also there's one thing that I wanted to mention, and that is that, so even though I have done the practice Yamantaka for many years, I still don't have really a lot of learning. I didn't really study the scriptures. Like, for example, there's a whole teaching on the four wheels of Yamantaka and so on. And so I'm also not able to explain all of these in great detail. But now Khenpo Tenzin Rinpoche here, through his kindness, he was able to give teachings to clarify these points to the disciples. And also you can always ask him questions. And actually Khenpo Tenzin, since he's very young, he dedicated his life really to the Dharma, to studying the Dharma. And nobody actually made him do it. He did it all on his own. It was his own interest. He just naturally, all on his own, made a great effort in studying the Dharma. In Tibet, for example, at the great Serta monastery and other places. And then also in India, he continued his studies. And basically until he came here, he dedicated his life just to that from the bottom of his heart and all on his own. Nobody encouraged him or really made him do it. And so you're also very fortunate that you have him to ask your questions, that he can clear away all kinds of doubts that you might have. And so now, due to his kindness, also we were able to have a more extensive commentary teaching on the Yamantaka. So the disciples are really very fortunate. So then next we come to the historical background of the empowerment. And so there probably are a lot of newer disciples this time. There are senior disciples and newer disciples. And so therefore this time I'm going to read the history in Tibetan first, and then we will do it in English. And I apologize to you in advance because I don't see very well. So it's very hard to read, especially nowadays. My left eye is just really getting worse. I basically can't see through that eye. But I'm just basically, I'm trying my best and I'm insisting and trying to do my best to read the text. So I'm sorry if I can't read everything clearly.
Taliban 대저시 라시지 자동만나고 걸 장벌의 시제는 마저도 포지 시다가 받는 로봇 transform하고 암상생 도르지 인조고살라테 이제 막까마당 다상 장벌 톡제 따지 톡제 주 자와지부 참벌로 누제 시갑네 로봇 양나가 봐 로봇 양나가 베스트를 또제 선도 낙차도 로봇 아까상 가발라테 디상 통은 나보라테 디 까들 성적도 로봇 돌아가기 까밥 로봇이 주민하남 주민하남 저 남의 성시 셔도 사바 코스름 진짜 내 섭도 타고 양도 매버들 다니 다른 것이 다 저건 가지고 섭도 양도 매버들 시죠 다 되레지变化统称，变化不是把变化统称在了南地，把比如不马上在了是吧？上天多的，他们在的这把带种的这长下去到不那长期一些领导什么，在各界到底俺出点公布了，我这个这得设计八本，设计八本这哇。从中我种的彭博罗去到说抓空城，那看意思，电子白彭博罗现在那去 jiwa zhuba zheshung jia xia chong jie jin zhong li sa jie nu chong ba sang qi do ji sang qi do ji zhe jie za la nang den de sa de de sa zuo jia xiang chong jia xiang chong la nang yin yang ga de ji ba ta le yo ba ta ji 초 찍들 준 마냠바 자와 공부 주바 그래서 다이 주바 가산식 공 주바 모랑와 거 주바 까로시 주바 렘토테 주바 초도 책 주바데 주바 든디 주바가 마냠바 주바가 마냠바 데리 다다다 이거서 주바데 데티 요즘에는 라마라 망보 요리데 탑지 고아토사 말이지 술을 먹어 말이 이제 생도 오늘도 양이 막아요 저거래 대사들로지 대대 송어들이 양도 매에 버려다 자상 통제 때마 책철도 되나 나다 제대로는 라마지 바테 it's
not a history. Long ago, in the age of perfection, and there was a god called Karum who misunderstood the view and practice of the secret mantra. In his next life, he was reborn in the south, below the 7 regions of the underworld, as Yama, the vicious black lord of death, who controlled 9 quarters of an iron castle. The destruction he inflicted upon beings invoked the intervention of the Buddhas. The noble Manjushri assumed the wrathful king Yamantaka's form, subdued Yama, and bound under oath his vicious retinue, turning them all into protectors of the teachings. After that, outwardly, he appeared in the boundless palace of Yama's abode, the extremely fierce charnel ground in the south. Inwardly, he appeared at Akanishdam, the utterly pure space expanse of the Vajradakini. There he taught extensively the common and uncommon explanatory tantras of the extremely fierce charnel ground of Manjushri and Samantabhadra, the tantras of direct oral transmission, the shared tantras, the general tantras, the special tantras, and so forth. These teachings were gathered by Manjushri, Vajrapani, and others and made into volumes of lapis lazuli. These were then concealed inside the great, glorious, self-arisen stupa in the land of Udayana. Having bound the Mamudakinis under oath, Garabdoje extracted from the stupa the dharma written in the secret language of Udayana and entrusted it to Manjushri Mitra. According to a different account, the dharma was gradually transmitted from the pure realm of Akanishdam through the gods Brahma, Sun, Supreme Bliss, and so forth, to the Dakini moonlight, who passed it on as an oral transmission to Manjushri Mitra of Magadha. The Yamantaka tantras and oral instructions were transmitted to the second Buddha, Padma Tudrengtsal, Shantigarbham, Jnanagarbham, Khagarbham, Tsuklakbalgyam, Dhanasamskritam, Chaktung Nakpo, Vasudaram, and so forth. In addition, based on these tantras and instructions, these masters have composed a vast array of practice texts, such as the condensed Wrathful Lord of Life from the Katun cycle, the 10 Wrathful Destroyers, and so forth. This particular cycle was transmitted as a dharma through Manjushri Yamantaka to Bungje Shintigarbha, who passed it to Chaktung Nakpo. The oral transmission, or the Gamma, and the secret moon great root tantra of Manjushri's mind were discovered by Jnanagarbha at Tsangbalunu, which is a limestone rock formation in the shape of a rhinoceros. He transmitted it to Akashagarbha in the Sindhu forest, who passed it on to Chakdung Nakpo. Then the Gamma and Dharma both were transmitted to Tsuklak Balge, who extracted from these tantras and instructions a cycle of teachings that became renowned as the 3 extremely profound wheels, the 4 characteristics, and the 3 vital points, also referred to as the repelling razor of fire. And so this is the repelling razor of fire is the Yamantaka practice that we now engage in the Jikung Kagyu lineage. And so then it was then transmitted to the great master Padma Chodengzal, who passed it on to the Nepali master Vasudhara. Nupsangi Yeshe, the Lord of Mantra, came before the presence of Vasudhara 7 times, who only gave him these instructions during his last visit, along with a seal of secrecy, prohibiting their disclosure to others at that time. The instructions were then written in silver letters on sheets of blue sea silk and placed into a small crystal casket and a dark casket made of onyx. The dharmas, there were 2 dharmas, they were then concealed at Pungbo Rinpoche and at the Koding temple in Lojak. The dharma at Pungbo Rinpoche was discovered by Gyashang Tom, the incarnation of the great master of Nup. And so Rinpoche said that this particular dharma that we are practicing here is this one, the dharma discovered by Gyashang Tom. So then he transmitted it to his disciple Laje Nupjung. The dharma at the Koding temple at Lojak was discovered by Laje Nupjung, and thus he received the transmission of both dharmas. His disciple Tsodun Rinchen Doje transmitted it to Gushang Barden, and then it was passed down to Lama Tsultrim, Rinchen, Ngachang, Changchuk Gompo, and Kitub Namka. He passed it on to Ringtsing Tsultrim, Gyatun Wongbu, and Namka Ringtsing Sangwa. Then it was transmitted to the Dharma king Jikung Ba Rinchen Puntsok, who then gave it to Chogyal Puntsok. He in turn passed it on to his brother Dashi Puntsok. Finally, the vast lineages of Gamma and Dharma merged into a single stream that has remained until now without corruption. The lineage includes 7 modes of transmission referred to as the Buddhist mind lineage, the Vidyadhara sign lineage, the human hearing lineage, the lineage of empowered aspiration, the lineage of prophetic transmission, the Dharma lineage for karmically fortunate ones, and the oral lineage of golden scrolls. This uncorrupted lineage contains the warm breath of the Dakinis. The heart-blood instructions of the lineage of sight that reveals the ritualistic aspects of this practice have remained unbroken. The lineage is undefiled by Samaya corruption and demonic influence. The Vajra dome of protection above is unimpaired. The raising force of the enchanted weapons, deadly repelling winds, in between is unremitting. The intense heat in the pit of suppression and destruction below has not been lost. It is essential to engage in this practice with a virtuous intention and place an iron seal on the dark side of magic. So this is the historical background, and so there's actually more to that history. We just mentioned the most important parts and the lineage masters, since we also don't have so much time today. But if you are interested in learning more about the history, then you can read about that later. But anyways, these were the lineage masters, and so this lineage that we follow, the sadhana is the blazing, the repelling razor of fire, and the dharma was the one discovered by Gyashang Tom. And all the lineage masters you can also find in the lineage supplication in the sadhana. So the empowerment is a little bit long, and so now is the best time to take a break, because once we get started, it's not so good to take a break. So we take a break now for about 20 minutes.